Time for Book of Experts TV.
Topics you love.
Experts you trust.
Friction-free referrals.
Tried,
tested,
Trusted.
This is Book of Experts, brought to you by salesman.me.
Welcome back for Book of Experts TV. And I have to tell you guys, I've been sitting on this episode, so excited to share it with you for a couple of weeks now, because I had an experience going back to a virtual event that I enjoyed, had an opportunity to join our guest tonight, and actually one of our members at Book of Experts enjoyed their virtual event and said, we need you to come talk to our community here at Book of Experts, because the topic tonight is how to rise up in your approach to networking. How do you actually not just rise up, but go a little bit deeper with the folks that you're meeting so that you're not just spinning your wheels, you're actually making real connections, maybe even friends for life when you're out there meeting new people. It's never been more important. I think this topic actually of networking, I've never seen so much attention on it because we are in a different environment. It's not the traditional networking, the local chamber of commerce. It's happening online. And so we need to approach it in a different way, but a better way. And so I'm super excited to invite into tonight's episode, Michael Roderick. Welcome, Michael, from Small Pond Enterprises, and joining us from New York City.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I'm just thrilled to have you here, Michael. One, because I appreciate, I got to know Jason Van Orden. He's a member with Book of Experts who introduced me to you. I had a chance to attend the Mixer event that you and Jason ran. I think you guys are together fabulous facilitators of that. And then, folks, I want to share a little bit. I want to share Michael's tagline from LinkedIn, because I think you guys will get a picture of where we're going tonight with this. So the words are, the first is, help your business be more referable. Check. We're super interested in that in Book of Experts. Like, that is our mission, to boost the visibility of our expert-based entrepreneurs. So we have our process of how we think about, making businesses more referable. But we know that when you do this right, like, you're going to grow, you're going to expand out that network. You're going to meet cool people and they're going to introduce you. Good things are going to happen. Second one, make your messaging more memorable. Oh, I love this. Like, this is because if you're not memorable, like, how are they going to talk about you when you're not in the room, right? And then finally, make your ideas unforgettable. So I feel like, Michael, you might have won the award for the best LinkedIn headline that I've seen, at least in my opinion. I don't know if I've seen any better.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So tonight we're going to talk about this idea of networking, but I'd love for you to share. I didn't give you the sort of long intro, your background, but can you tell us a little bit of how you come to this place in your approach? And then we'll get into the meat, because I know folks are eager to hear a better approach to going out and meeting new people in a way that serves others, serves yourself, and makes this world a better place.
Sure. So I originally started as a high school English teacher, and I went from being a high school English teacher to a Broadway producer in under 2 years. So a lot of people were very curious as to how I did that. And I was getting my master's at the time in educational theater. And one of the things that I had learned was the power of simulations. So I started hosting workshops where I would simulate networking experiences. I'd have people actually act out one-on-one meetings, job interviews, and cocktail parties. And through that, I started to notice a lot of patterns, and patterns are always the precursor for frameworks. So I developed a bunch of frameworks around relationship building, and a lot of people started kind of sharing them and talking about these ideas. And I started to ask myself, okay, this seems to be very, very quick. Like, I seem to just be getting into all of these rooms, and it's not just like basic networking. So like, what is the reason that I'm in all of these rooms? And I realized it was because people would talk about me when I wasn't in the room in a good way. So the more I thought about that, the more I realized that it was not the fact that I was good at networking that was making things happen. It was the fact that I was referable. It was the fact that people were constantly sharing my ideas and my thoughts with other people when I wasn't there. So I decided, okay, I'm going to dig really, really deep in this. And I started to study referability, and I started to look at what are the reasons why people feel honored to introduce us, feel excited to put us in touch with other people, and feel excited to share our own messages. So now that's the work that I do.
Michael, you've got both my ears. You've got my heart on this topic. I didn't realize you and I actually have a similar background. So I was an English, trained to be a teacher, and eventually a university administrator. I have that English degree background as well.
Nice.
But other folks are loving this topic. So I want to show you, like, this is what's coming in from folks. Great topic. Adele says, this sounds great. It's fantastic. Other folks are saying, agreed. I can't wait to hear more. Like, people are feeling this pain point of going out, this networking for the sake of networking. For why?
Yes.
Like, how do we make real, in particularly with what's been going on in this past year? I think people, they want that real connection. They need that real connection, even if it's with new people coming into your world, because everything else has been so shaken up. So I love where we're going with this. I wanted to clarify, because we're going to unpack this, folks. I promise. I'm here to pick Michael's brain as well, because I love the frameworks that he's describing. But one of the key things is reverse engineering this referability, because it doesn't just happen automatically.
Yes.
And that is the big mistake that we've seen with our folks coming into the book of, like, as entrepreneurs, I think we just believe, we know that we're doing good work. We know there's value in it. So we assume that others can see it. And as you said, talk about us when we're not in the room, but that is not a given. So let's unpack this a little bit more, Michael. I'm super excited to hear where do you start with this?
Yeah. So the way that I always like to think about this is that you want to, I call it giving yourself an F, where basically most of the time when we're thinking about what it is that we do, we're going to try to describe that for our referral partners. We're going to try to describe that to the people that we're talking to. And what we really want to do is we want to give ourselves an F. We want to think about what we do for our clients. Right? And really take the time to identify, well, what is it that I'm actually doing for people? What is the benefit that I'm creating with the service that I have? And very, very often that's the issue. Most of the time, in even any networking scenario, there's this sort of breakdown of like, well, this is what I do, and I want you to understand what I do, and I want you to understand me and understand all of my experience and all of my work. And there's not enough of, this is what I'm doing for other people. This is how I think about the world. This is how I think about helping and supporting other individuals. And when you create that, you just become significantly more accessible. So if I'm meeting you for the first time and I'm talking about the type of work that I am passionate and excited about doing for other people. So in my case, I help thoughtful givers become thought leaders, because people who love to give and support and help others are usually the worst at doing things for themselves. And at the very, very bottom of that list is them sitting there and saying, how do I package myself? How do I present myself to an audience? How do I get people to understand what it is that I do? So when I go and I tell people that, they instantly are like, oh, well, how do you do that? What are you doing? And I think that one of the main issues that happens specifically with referability is there is no referability without curiosity. If I don't have more questions for you, if I don't want to dig in deeper with you, that conversation's going to be gone. It's going to go away very, very, very quickly. So it's all about taking the time to frame things in such a way that people say, that's fascinating, that's interesting, that kind of hits me, I need to learn more.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the curiosity that has to be brought to the table really has to be brought on both ends. One, in the preparation of what we're thinking about the other people and how they're receiving our information. It's not just what we're doing, but the why behind it that's powering it from behind. And also the curiosity of the recipient. If someone is not open and they're very agenda driven, sort of the takers, it's only going to go so far. I also want to shout out, David Taylor Klaus, one of our premium members at Book of Experts, I think he brought up a great point. I'll put this on the screen. He said, what does success look like when you become really easy to refer? Other people feel honored to introduce us, right?
Yes.
There's a win, both like they are winning by making that introduction, and not just doing because it's a favor for us, but the social currency that's being gathered amongst everybody. There's three sides to this, right?
Yes.
The person sending making the introduction, the person receiving the introduction. Like we all want to win all the way around. So.
Yes, exactly. And that's such an important part of the focus, right? And I think that so often, and with relationship building, this is such an important piece. You want to spend the time to get to understand other people so that you can see the world through their eyes. So when you're out and about, you're talking to people, you hear those keywords and you say, oh, wow, yes, that's something you're struggling with, or that's something you're thinking about. Here's somebody who I think would be the best person to talk to about that. Or here's the person who I think can help you with that gap, with that challenge, or with that particular issue. But that comes from a place of active listening. And to your point about sort of the networking that's like super driven and very, very transactional, what happens in most of those scenarios is that those people aren't doing it active listening. They are sitting there waiting for you to finish so that they can present their pitch. They're not actually listening to what you have to say. And it's when you listen to what people have to say where you're actually able to understand how you can actually support. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people in the networking world give this advice of opening a conversation with how can I help you? Because I think it's offensive. I think if I open with how can I help you, I'm already assuming that you need help. I'm already placing you in a scenario in which you are lower than me because I'm like, well, I'm going to help you. I'm going to support. And most importantly, I don't even know you yet. And yet I'm offering to help you. So what if you're doing something that's horrible? What if you're doing super sketchy things? I've already said that I'm willing to open up my network to you. That makes absolutely no sense.
Right. So this is great. I'm actually putting this in the comments because I love this example for all the reasons that you just shared. And I would add, it's damn hard to answer that question when you're asked. You put the whole burden, you've just unloaded your burden and put it on someone else to try to answer that question with no rapport, no getting to know you that happens even before that. So
exactly.
I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to word this for the comments to keep it nice and short and pithy, but I love this.
Thanks. So it's one of those things where as we are, sort of thinking through, we want to take the time to listen to the other person and say like, okay, what do I understand about them? How do I get to know them? How do I get to understand the things that they're working on? And if we're doing that, we're never going to have to ask, how can I help you? We're just going to know, like, we're going to have ideas. And then you don't ever have to worry about it. It's awkward, even towards the end of a conversation. Like if you're just like, hey, I'm really curious, like what could you use, help with? It still feels kind of weird. It's so much better to be able to say, you just mentioned that this issue of social media has been a challenge for you. I happen to chatted recently with somebody who really does some great work in that they've really kind of figured out how to get those things together. Is that somebody who would be helpful for you to talk to? And it's so different when it's casual, when there is that ease, than when it's like, oh, please tell me what your problem is so that I can fix it. And then, most people in the networking world have for years worshipped reciprocity. Right? Like most dynamics, like large scale groups have always been built on this idea of if, I do this thing for you, then you are expected to do this thing for me. And the fact of the matter is everybody has a different reciprocity timeline and everybody has a different reciprocity impulse. There are tons of people who they don't really think about reciprocity in the immediate, where it's like, I'm going to do this thing for you. And there are plenty of people who don't even feel the need for reciprocity, who it's not really on their radar. It's not part of the thing. So trying to game a system and be like, I'm going to do this because of this, it doesn't work. But if you just keep people informed about what it is that you're looking for help for, and you consistently build credibility amongst the folks in your network, as long as you are doing that, you really don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about every meeting or every conversation having some tie to reciprocity. And if you do, that's a really horrible way to live your life, in my opinion, if you're thinking about the whole sort of networking, relationship building side of things.
I want to circle back to that point about reciprocity in just a moment. I'm going to jump on a couple comments that came in. So one from our AirMeet community. By the way, folks, if you haven't already seen this link, you'll see the link to AirMeet. That's where you can join. Our community's already there. We're going to do the Q&A tables. We're going to do networking, our version of networking with Michael after the live stream. So we're going to live stream until the top of the hour. Make sure you hit the AirMeet link if you want to join us there for that Q&A experience. But oops, sorry, Melissa, I misspelled your last name when I typed it quickly. There's Blair, not Bear. Melissa said, I was wondering why I hate that question so much. So this was in response to what Michael just shared, or why that's such a triggering question. I also want to throw, David said, most networking ponds are stocked with people just waiting to speak. Few are listening to connect, which is the element I hear you speaking to. I think that's a great point. Yeah. On the reciprocity, let's take a little side venture here for a second. Sure. And can we talk about Adam Grant, givers, takers, and matchers? Is that what you're describing when you talk about these different reciprocity levels? That, for example, if folks are not familiar with Adam's book, Give and Take, there are some of us that are just programmed to give. Mm-hmm. That's just what we do. We get a lot of pleasure and reward from playing that game with others. And for that reason, I think you're saying that there's no expectation of the reciprocity. That's not why we're doing it. The takers are going to be sort of ignoring the reciprocity. They're in it to get what they can get. And the matchers are the ones, and it's, I don't know, maybe a third of the people. I don't remember the exact breakdown, but there are some folks that are going to be constantly keeping score of the in and out, like a debits and credits on your bank account.
Yeah, they're it's a transactional sort of thought process, and Adam's book is an amazing book, and it really helps you see kind of how all of this breaks down. And there is just sort of one thing that I'll add to it, which I think is very, very important, which is the aspect of, we are not, whatever that definition is, all of the time. So at different moments in our lives, we have different experiences, and we're not always in a state where we're able to give. There are different moments in our lives where we do kind of follow more of that transactional matcher kind of thing because of who we're dealing with. And I am a big believer. So I refer to these people as advocates, boomerangs, and I have celebrities in that category, and drains for myself, right? So advocates are people who, they love to help you, they love to support you, they fall into that giver category. But the thing that's really important to understand about advocates are that they are usually worse at advocating for themselves, right? So they're not the people in your network who will let you know what it is that they need. They're just way more likely to help you and support you. The boomerangs are more those networker types that kind of fall into that matcher category. It's a little more transactional. Your celebrities are the people within your circle who everybody else is asking you to be introduced to. And what's really interesting is that everybody's a celebrity to somebody, but celebrity is relative to everyone. So when you take the time to sort of identify, well, who are those people, it really changes the way that you're dealing with the managing of those relationships, right? And some celebrities could be advocates, boomerangs, or the last category, which are drains. And what's really important to understand about this is that I don't refer to them as takers or think about them as takers, because I think every single one of us at some point in our life has had to be a drain. We've had to be someone who just needed to receive because of a really hard point in our lives. Like, we've all had really, really hard moments. So I don't just sort of discount somebody as like a taker or an energy vampire. I ask myself, like, how much of a state of need are they in right now? And then I look very specifically at helping versus enabling. because when people are in that high level of a drained state, you could fall into enablement. Like you could fall into the aspect of, I'm going to just try to do everything for you or solve everything for you, as opposed to, I'm going to give you the tools to help yourself move forward, to help yourself figure out these particular things. So I think, going back to what you were talking about with reciprocity and sort of how people think about reciprocity, I think that there's sometimes a danger in putting people into one category or putting ourselves into one category and not realizing that over time we sort of go back and forth. And in some cases, you may be very, very giving and supporting, but you may have had a really bad day or a really bad experience, or you may just be in a place where you feel safe. So you're willing to actually let people know that you're not doing well, that you have challenges, that you have issues. And in that situation, I don't really consider you a taker. I consider you somebody letting us know, what it is that you need.
So there's a lot of things to like here. I'll put the 4 types up on the screen in a moment. But one of the things that I really like is, and this is my pet peeve with the personality testing, is that I do think we tend to shift sometimes over time as we grow and mature, but also situationally when we're in different, what our needs are in a given, our personality type may be one way with family and completely different in a work circle. And there are reasons why that come out. So I'm going to put this on the screen here. So 4 different types of networkers: the advocates, the boomerangs, the celebrities, and drains. And recognizing that we may be playing different roles. We're not just one type, but we may shift depending on where we're at. I also want to throw a few other folks. So Sylvia had, this one has been out for a little while. I think going back to something you said earlier, but really appreciating that abundance mindset that you were describing. And David, I hope you're with us in the Q&A tables tonight, because I want to sit back and watch you and Michael come together and have this conversation, because you've dropped a couple nuggets for us already. But he said, being listened to feels so much like being loved that people can scarcely tell the difference.
That is so true. So true.
And if we live in a world that needs something right now, it's maybe a little bit more love and a little bit more being listened to. So love these comments that are coming in. Michael, let's jump into frameworks, because you've got several to share for folks. And guys, I want you to walk away from this masterclass with several different things that you can go use. Why? Because we're going to be networking right afterwards, right? You can come join us on the Q&A tables. You can join us for the speed networking afterwards, and you can test out some of what Michael is sharing with you to see how you can go a little bit deeper in your networking by listening to folks, figuring out where they're at, or maybe in some cases, even speaking up for what you need. Let's talk about the Rise Up framework first. Does that make sense? Is that a good starting point?
I think that's a great starting point. Yeah, because the Rise Up framework is really about, it's about answering this question that most people will ask, which is, what do I actually have to offer? Right. So a lot of the time when when people will talk to us about adding value, is sort of the buzzword that gets used, where it's like, how do I add value? And for a lot of people, there's a hard understanding of what that is. So what I did was I sort of broke it down, and it's easy to remember because it spells the word rise up. So I'm going to talk you through each of those concepts. So the first way that you can really help somebody, and that's very, very useful, is referrals. And when I say referrals, I think it's very, very important to understand that referrals are, you have actually spent the time talking to somebody else about their service. You have a clear idea of what they charge. Like, you understand what actually constitutes a real honest referral for them. And you talk to somebody else who is interested in that, and you vet whether or not they want to have that conversation. And you only make that connection if those two people have basically said, yes, I'm open to doing, this work. And yes, I'm open to talking to somebody about possibly hiring them or working with them. And what tends to happen, which I think is kind of the biggest issue, is that most of the time we have this scenario where people basically call an introduction a referral. And it happens all the time. It's usually a big issue. And the important thing to understand, introduction, which is the second part of that framework, which is another great way of helping, is just, two people You think they're really interesting. You think there may be things that they could potentially do together or help each other with, but you're not saying this is a client, this is a potential. You're not doing any of that. You're just saying, I think the two of you are interesting. I think that there are ways that you could work together, and I'm going to let you all take it from here. I'm going to let you have this conversation. Now, one very important caveat is this aspect of making sure that it is a double opt-in scenario. Just like with the referral, you don't just foist somebody upon somebody else. If it's an introduction scenario, you say, let me take this person's info, send it to this other person and say, is this an introduction that you're interested in? And if they say yes, then you connect the two people and you take care of them in sort of that particular way. But yeah. Do you have a question? I saw you pop in.
I do. Yeah, I'm jumping back in because I love this distinction between referrals and introductions. It's something that we've talked about in Book of Experts. We actually referred to ourselves and do at times talk about the referral network aspect of what we're doing in Book of Experts. But quite often, and we changed a lot of our language to reflect, the introductions could be strategic partners. It could be two people with a value system in common, like two cool, smart people who should be connected because we don't know all the good things that might come out of that. So I really like how you've nuanced and there are times when someone has that bleeding neck and they need a product, a program, a service, like they're already problem aware and they're solution aware. They're just trying to find the right provider. That can be a referral that could be a godsend for everybody involved.
Sure.
But let's not try to pound a square peg into a round hole and make everything a referral.
Exactly. And that's usually the danger, right? Especially in early stage networking, people will sort of think about everything as a referral. And the worst thing that you can do, you can torture a relationship by coming into that relationship trying to sell when the other person is just trying to talk, right? Nobody wants to come into that particular scenario, right? You want to look for genuine inquiry. If somebody is having a conversation with you, they're getting to know you. If they say, tell me more about what it is that you do, or they say, that's something I'm interested in learning more about, or that's something I think could be a fit for me, fantastic. But the mistake that I see a lot of people make is in these get to know you conversations or these types of things, they're already launching into the sales conversation. They're already launching into, well, this is what I could do for you, or this is how I could. And the thing is, the second that you say you can do something for me, I'm instantly going to doubt it. And that's just the way our brains work, right? We have this aspect of we don't trust someone if they come right away telling us that they know what we need, even if it's exactly what we need, because we don't want to be told, right? We want to come to those conclusions ourselves. We want to be able to think about things and come to that, or, arrive at those conclusions ourselves, not be told this is what you need or this is what you have to do. So we want to make sure that we're giving that back and forth, because that's really what's going to, help with that. And even more so, that's so important in those introduction scenarios, because introductions are really about just like getting to know each other and understanding, are there ways that you could potentially help each other? If there is business, great, but like there is no pressure attached to an introduction. And if you start attaching pressure to an introduction, either on yourself or with the other person, it's going to just ruin the conversation and the relationship. It's going to feel awkward all around.
Yeah, I think this is a great point, and there is a natural timeline to these discussions, and it's driven by the two folks on either end of the dialogue. Quite often people ask me, how quickly can this unfold? Well, that depends on the two people involved. It can be very quick if the needs are there and the fit between the two sides. Like it can, I've literally seen in 24 or 48 hours, people can go from, hey, I just met you, to we're doing business, we're doing something amazing together. But it also can take a lot more time. So I think sorry, I kind of jumped in there on the framework.
No worries.
So I think we're at S. So let's jump into S next.
No worries, no problem at all. So S is for strategy. And what tends to happen a lot of the time is that we discount the things that we've learned or the things that we've discovered that have really helped us over the years. Because a lot of the time it's like, well, we've been doing it forever. right? So if we've been doing it forever and we just like, we don't really think about it as like this big thing. We think about it as like, oh, okay, yeah, this is an okay, very simple kind of, kind of process. But the fact of the matter is, the things that we have learned could actually be really helpful for somebody else. So a lot of the time, one of the best ways to add value in a particular conversation is if somebody says that they've had an issue, you stop and ask yourself, well, have I ever had that issue? And if you have, you share, oh, well, you know what? This is what's worked for me when I had that issue. Or this is a challenge that came up and this is something that I did that worked really well. Or if this is actually your area of expertise, this is one of the best ways to show people your expertise as opposed to telling them. Because you can show far more expertise by asking really, really good questions than you can with any presentation, with any, conversation. Like if you just start asking them questions where they haven't necessarily thought about that way of thinking or that concept, they will instantly be like, well, tell me more about you. Tell me more about how you work and what you do. And this is the thing I think a lot of people discount and don't think enough about. It's like, if you have a lot of expertise, then you probably have questions that are 10 times better than a lot of other people about those subjects because you've dove so deep into those particular subjects. So you sharing your strategies and your ideas is showing the other person your expertise as opposed to telling them, which adds more value to the conversation, but also causes them to say, man, I need to know you, or my clients need to know you. You create that curiosity, you create that magnetism that we're talking about in terms of referability. You give somebody a strategy. I mean, I'm here because I shared a strategy. Right? We were in this we were doing one of the calls that I do with Jason, and I shared the Rise Up framework. And you reached out to me from that framework, right? So it's working in that particular thing. It's showing the expertise. It causes people to say, I want to learn more. I want to know more, right? So E is for events. And what happened?
Actually, before we jump into before we go there, we're getting some questions, and we're getting good ones, by the way. And I'm trying to get these notes into our comments so folks can follow along. So we've got the S for strategy. And I was thinking that, content marketing would be an example, or referencing content like, hey, I just wrote about this the other day. You might want to, that kind of but I love your example. In fact, I'm going to bring this up on, I attributed this because these may not have been your exact words, but I think I got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Best strategy is a well-placed question. Yeah. We also had, so let me make sure. So Sylvia asked this one, Michael, would you advise that those of us who are in networking groups where referrals are expected from fellow members to help our fellow members distinguish between that intros versus referrals?
Yes, 100%. One of the biggest issues that people have with networking groups is the fact that those networking groups are built on what I like to refer to as enforced referrals. And you don't want to end up in the ER, right? Like, you do not want that scenario where basically everybody is expecting you to, have referrals. So what tends to happen is, because the referrals are enforced, where it's like, hey, you need to get a certain number of referrals a month, people don't actually think about referrals anymore. They just think, I've got to get an introduction out the door. So much, much better to have a conversation and say, listen, I know that we have a quota to fill, in terms of how this whole thing is structured, but I just want to make sure that we understand that I am looking for referrals. I am not looking for introductions right now. Now, some of you may be looking for introductions, and some people in those networking groups may be looking for introductions. But if you are there for referrals, if that is the reason that you are there, and the group is focused around the idea of referrals, you would do much, much better to spend more time understanding with each other who is the good referral than you would thinking about who can I introduce you to, or trying to sort of hit that quota every week, every month, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think, and so I'm going to just, shout out to our members of Book of Experts. This is why we talk about that feedback loop. So when you're making your introductions, making your referrals, and where there's the little reminder on there that you can loop back a week later and check in and say, hey, Michael, how was that introduction for you? This is your opportunity to say, it wasn't really what I was looking for, because at this point in time, I'm super busy. If it's a referral, that's great. If it's a strategic, introduction, I may not have time to do that right now. So getting that feedback from folks. I also want to get, Bernie had a good question in here. It was, what is the best way to make that handoff? Is there mechanically a difference in how you handle introductions versus referrals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with an introduction, it's very casual. It's very much you're just saying like, listen, I have no idea where this could go. I'm not really sure, but I just think that you two would really have a great conversation. If it's a referral, you're basically saying, okay, so let's say you are looking for help with something. I'm going to say like, okay, so tell me more about what exactly you want here. So you're telling me, okay, you want a website built. Okay, great. What kind of budget are we talking about in terms of having a website built? Are you just looking for somebody to throw up a page for you? Or are you looking to really do this up in a significant way? And if you tell me, yes, we need to do a whole overhaul. It's a very, tough process. We're probably looking to spend anywhere between 25 to 30,000 on it. Then I'm going to say, okay, that is very clear to me. So I know somebody who plays at that price point who I think could be a really solid option for you. Would you be open to having a conversation about that? Are you actually ready for that right now? And you may say, yes, perfect. Yes, send them my way. Or you may say, you know what? I need about a month or two. I don't think we're ready to have a sales conversation yet. And because I'm asking you all those questions, and because I'm taking the time to outline and make sure that I've got all the details correct, I'm saving both of us time, because I'm not going and making an introduction to somebody who gets $200 to, create a website for you when you need a $25,000 website. Like, I'm not doing that because I've taken the time to ask and really, really structure this. And I'm going to that person, and I'm not sending them somebody who isn't willing to spend money, who hasn't, made the decision about what they want and what they're looking for.
Yeah, I love this. I love the distinction of the quality of the introductions and referrals that are being made here. In a moment, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about E. Michael's already given us a hint of what's coming. We're going to talk about events, but I think you have a slightly different take on this. From when I first heard events, my mind went one direction. You shared something different. We'll do that in just a moment.
Sure.
But before, I'm going to share a little video for you guys, so that if you are watching this on one of the places we're live streaming, so you might be on LinkedIn, you might be on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you're seeing this, YouTube, we're live streaming on all those places, but you want to come join us in AirMeet. The link is in the comments, by the way. Come join us in AirMeet so you can jump on one of the Q&A tables, and then right afterwards, we'll do a little bit of speed networking. You can try out some of these questions, some of these ways of making a deeper approach to your networking in the sessions, so it looks a little bit like this. Because folks are like, speed networking, how's that going to work on that? You'll see, you can actually get in there. You can be in one-to-one conversations. But before we even do that, we do small group at the tables, which will be your opportunity to ask some of the questions you have of Michael. I'm getting as many as I can out of the comments, but I know there are a lot more there that people want to hear from you. Let's talk about events for a second. Part of this Rise Up framework, we're over halfway through. In the first word, we're finishing up. E is for events. How are you thinking about events and how they can come to play in this exchange and introductions between people?
Yeah, so a lot of the time we end up getting invited to more events than we can actually attend, right? So, any given point in time, there are 5 or 6 things that we get invited to check out or go to or be a part of that we can't be at all the places at once. So the thing is, most of the time we just delete those emails, right? Or we just say, well, I can't make it, and regrets or whatever. But this is an amazing opportunity to help other people within your network. So if you're in a conversation, you may say, hey, you know what? I just found out about this podcast event. I can't go tomorrow night because I've got a dinner, but would you be interested? And I'd be happy to introduce you to the host of that event, to the person. I'd let them know, that type of thing. And the way that I like to think about events, I call this the OCG framework. So basically, if something comes my way and I can take full advantage of it, then it's truly an opportunity. But if it comes my way and I can't take full advantage of it, it's not an opportunity, it's a coincidence. And I can either decide to ignore that coincidence, or I can take that coincidence and I can turn it into a gift for someone else. So that is the way that I'm always thinking. Like if an event is coming up, I'm thinking, okay, I can't make it. Who else would want to make it? Or if I can make it, who else should be here? Who else should be a part of this event? If somebody reaches out to me and says they want me to speak, and it's on a topic that I'm not interested in, or that I don't think I would do justice to, I'm always thinking, who else would be a better speaker on that particular topic? And if I've done a talk and it's gone really well, and people say, well, do you know other guests? Do you know other people who would be really great? I'm always thinking in those conversations, if I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, wow, this person is fascinating. You can bet I'm going to say, you know what? I really think you should do this interview, or I really think you should go to this event. I really think you should speak on this, summit or whatever the scenario is, because I'm seeing that and I'm helping and sort of supporting. So a lot of the time we don't use those events that we get invited to. We just sort of, discount them. So that's a really great way of adding value within those conversations and really making it so that there's even more to connect with that person on and have further conversation on. And then that leads up to which is unknowns. And the interesting thing about unknowns is that there are technologies that we learn about, there are books that we read, there are people that we meet, there's all these different things that we sometimes assume other people have heard about them. But most of the time, people have not. And I'll never forget, there was this one time I was talking to a guy, he had just sold his company, he was a tech guy. Just sold his company, and he was talking to me about feeling this like massive sense of overwhelm. And I figured, everybody had heard about the book Essentialism and had read it, because you're in the entrepreneur space, like a lot of people know Essentialism, right? So I say to him, I don't know if you've ever heard of this book, but there's this really great book called Essentialism that talks about this aspect of how do you make those choices of what is essential in your life. And he said, oh, no, I hadn't heard about it. So I told him about it, and I got an email from him. We had breakfast that day. I got an email from him during lunchtime, and he was like, that book is saving my life. Essentialism is amazing. This is so useful. And we went on to do, I did a talk for his tech company. We ended up having a really solid relationship after that particular experience because he had never heard of it. So often, like, there are things that are cool to us that we think are neat that we assume everybody else knows about, but most of the time they don't. Most of the time they haven't heard about, those types of things. So the more that you can bring up those unknowns again in conversation, it's just exciting for people, right? It's another way to sort of make that, make that conversation deeper and richer. And then the final one in terms of supporting others is press. And what's been fascinating about the world of press is you go, I don't know, 5-8 years back, and there were so many gatekeepers when it came to press. There was the aspect of trying to sell something to an editor, trying to get you couldn't get an article, like you couldn't get a radio interview unless you were working with agents and managers and producers and all of these different types of things. And now everybody has a platform for the most part. right? Like everybody has some sort of form of press. So what I often like to say is that you currently have a press list in your pocket right now. Like all you need to do is go to LinkedIn and literally type in whatever magazine you're interested in and the word contributor into the search. And I can promise you that there's probably either a second tier or a first tier connection of yours that is writing for one of these publications or is contributing to one of these publications in some capacity, whether it be through video, writing, etc. And the most important aspect of this is that if you make yourself the source instead of the subject, you can develop even deeper relationships with people in the press. Because most of the time when people are talking to the press, they want to pitch themselves. And they're like, will you write about me? Will you talk about me? But if you do that, you can literally only do that once, maybe twice, because they're not going to write about you every day. They're not going to cover you every day. Conversely, if you're the source, if you're just like saying to this person, listen, I know that you write for this publication. Who else would be great to interview? What other types of people do you want to know? Well, now, anytime you're in a conversation, you can say, hey, you know what? I know of a really great podcast that I think you should be on. Or, you know what? I have a friend who's writing for Forbes right now on cryptocurrency, and the stuff that you're talking about, I think would be perfect for them. And you all can sort of get together and help each other out. And that's the thing. It's like, we have all these platforms, we have all these areas. Yes, we might have been interviewed on something, but how many times do we just walk away from that interview and never actually ever think about the host, right? And say like, well, what other content do they want? What other things are they looking at? So, I mean, I've gotten to the point now where when people come to me and they say they'd like to do more podcasts, they'd like to do more events, all these different types of things, I'll send them a list of here are the shows I've been on. Here are the people that I've done things for, and take a look and tell me, are any of these interesting to you? If so, more than happy to reach out and pitch you. And just like I had talked about with that aspect of double opt-in and all of that scenario, with those types of things, I literally say, I can't make any promises because a person's press platform is their platform, but I'm more than happy to reach out to them and see if they'd be open to having you on. And then no pressure. Right? I can just pass it along. And if they want it, great. If they don't, totally fine.
All right, Michael, my fingers are on fire because I've been dropping the whole Rise Up framework in the comments as you were chatting here. And so they're there. You guys can go back and look. We've gone through the last one being, let's get this on the screen. You have a press list in your pocket. Make yourself the source, not the subject. So we've got you've been giving us some golden nuggets. I want to circle back for a second to talk about the U in the up, because you talked about unknowns. And this is one of our favorite things to do as part of our masterclass, our talking with our experts, is to do the expert pick of the week, because we discover such amazing stuff. Like this is the social discovery, the thing that you've never heard of that could literally, as you mentioned with Essentialism, could be the book that changes the course of your life and your business. You just were busy doing other things. You didn't happen to know about this one. Michael, what do you have to share for us today for your expert pick of the week?
Yeah, so for me, it's Superhuman. Superhuman is basically a tool that you can use for your email. It makes your email far more intuitive. Ever since I started using it, I can get to inbox zero in such a short period of time, depending on how crazy the day is. Like, I can get to inbox zero so fast with Superhuman, because it just gives you all of these intuitive tools to be able to answer your email with keystrokes and it has an app on your phone where you're able to send things to your desktop so that you can actually clear the emails on your phone, but they will show up again on your desktop when you have to answer things that are going to require you to sort of type on your desktop and all of those types of things. So I just think it's an amazing tool. It has saved me tons and tons of time, and it's just super useful.
I love this, and I'm kind of geeking out about it because I thought I was just a weird one, because I'm all the time, probably several times a day, sending emails to myself as reminders, because I'm out and I'm mobile, and I know that my desktop is sort of going to be my clearinghouse. this will get filed here. I'll put this here. But it was just that little trigger that I didn't realize someone had already built this into the app. So I love this. I've heard about Superhuman from others. I haven't actually used it myself, but I think you're like the third or fourth really smart person that I've run into that is loving this app. So I think that tells us it's worth checking out. My share of the week is actually this book came up in conversations. It's not new. It's just a reference that, you have to love the books that get pulled off your shelf, more regularly than others, because there's something in them. And this is a very small one. It's very thin, as you can see. Ooh, there we go. It's called Exactly What to Say by Phil M. Jones.
Oh, yes.
There we go.
Yes.
Getting a bad reflection on it. But Exactly What to Say. It's what I find is sometimes when you get, just the right words delivered at the right time can unlock the door. And it just, the way he shares is the simplicity, and he's got, I think, 23 or 24 examples. So it's not an extensive book, but I do pull this off every once in a while and just remind myself. I was actually sharing an example with our team of this is how you can just make it a little bit easier for people to digest what you're saying and make it easier for them to say yes or no, and they're in control. It's not manipulative, but it's just good communication. And he has another one. I think Phil Jones has Magic Words, which is also another one of his books. But this has been one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Cool. Michael, let's as we're wrapping up here, we're in our last couple of minutes. What have we missed framework wise? We spent a lot of time on Rise Up. Is there anything else that folks should know in the live stream part? But actually, you know what? I want to ask you about the prompts. I want you to, I know you've got a couple questions that you want to ask folks for the Q&A tables. Can we start there? And then anything you want to share on the frameworks before we wrap up?
Sure. So interestingly enough, they sort of both tie into each other, right? Because the frameworks really tie very well into the prompts. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is the idea of referability partners as opposed to just referral partners. And easy to remember because referability partners are a group that you want to tap into, TAP, and those are translators, angels, and producers. So the translators in your network are the people who are very good at helping you understand what it is that you do. They're the language people, right? They help you kind of figure out that side of things. The angels in your network are the people who love to make introductions and connect you to opportunities. And the producers in your network are the people who see the business opportunities in what it is that you're doing. They're the business people. They understand how to take the idea and explode it, figure out how to help you make more money, all of those different types of things. And not everybody thinks in sort of that producer kind of mindset. So if you are looking at beyond just referral partners and saying, who are my referability partners? Who are my translators, my angels, and my producers? And also for yourself, are you a translator, angel, or producer? And who can you help and support? That can be really, really useful and really, really powerful. And then the other prompt that I would bring up is the aspect of most of the time we only talk about the professional when it comes to connecting with people, but these are people, right? These are individuals. So we also want to address the personal. So what are the personal aspects? What are the things that are non-business about them? The inspirational, because most people will ask you about what you do, but you will light up when they ask you about why you do it, right? So the inspirational side of things. The aspirational, which is what is your next step? What is this person trying to accomplish or trying to do? And then finally, that idea of the problematic. What is the challenge or the issue? I like to refer to it as the toothache, right? The thing that is causing so much frustration that you will do anything you can to get it fixed and sort of solve that particular problem. So between Rise Up, TAP, and that motivation spectrum, we've actually got a lot of different touch points in conversations that we can tap into.
Yeah, this is great. So I'm hard at work making notes here. So you can think about who are the translators, the angels, and the producers in your network now. That's one of the questions that we'll be talking about at the Q&A tables. So start to think, maybe even jot down some names and think about, what role are you playing? And maybe that role shifts with other folks. And also we'll talk a little bit about questions that you can ask that can get get to know someone, the personal side, outside of work, the inspirational, the aspirational, and the problematic. So those are 2 questions that we're going to be going into Q&A tables. You'll have a chance to chat with Michael a little bit, hear a little bit more about his approach, and maybe run some of your ideas by him. What if I tried it? What do you think of this kind of question? Does this, and he'll give his perspective and walk us through what he finds is working so well to do this Rise Up framework, the TAP framework. And what was the last one? Did I miss the?
There isn't a word for that one.
I was going to say I didn't catch the acronym on that one, but the personal, the inspirational, the aspirational, and the problematic. Michael, this has been fabulous. You've given us a bunch of gold. I know that the folks in Airmeet are excited to hear from you and sit down with you. Folks, just here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to wrap up the live stream. It'll take me a couple minutes. We're running multiple systems to do this, but when we close down the live stream in the main stage, the lounge, what they call the lounge area, will open up, and you will see the tables. So just click one of those chairs at the table. Doesn't really matter which table you choose. Michael will be able to bounce from table to table and get to know and hear from all of you. So don't worry about trying to pick the table that Michael's at. He's going to be moving. You guys stay where you're at. If you have questions specifically about Book of Experts, there's one table that's labeled for that. I'll jump over there and help anyone that needs that. Otherwise, we'll do about 15 to 20 minutes. I'll be watching the clock. And when it's time to go into the speed networking, the one-to-one part of our networking, I'll jump up on stage and give you a heads up that that's coming as well. Michael, this has been great. Like you really brought a lot of great information, a lot of questions that we haven't been able to cover in the chat because the information was that good and people just want to know more. I'm excited to explore this a little bit more with you. We'll see you guys on, come join us on the Q&A tables. That's where all the fun's going to be at. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys in the back room.
Thanks.